Warnings of potential suicide bombings are coming in the wake of a retreat by a militant group from Somalia's capital. Al-Shabaab insurgents say they're just changing tactics. CNN's Nema El-Bagher is following the story. She's been reporting from Mogadishu, but we join her now in Nairobi, Kenya. Nema, it has been years since the Western recognized government has actually controlled its own capital. What's changed?
Well, I think the big issue here is the way that the Al-Shabaab responded to the famine currently blighting Somalia. They issued an edict banning Western aid groups from coming in, causing civilians to flee their areas into the capital, Mogadishu, and also really eroding any kind of grassroots support from them. Although they still continue to get a lot of support from the militant and extremist networks internationally, they don't have the support from the community. You know, I was there in 2006 when the Ethiopians came in, and that was very much seen by people in Somalia as a Western imperial aggression, and the Shabaab enjoyed so much support. I was hearing from people who were saying that they didn't have much to give the Shabaab, but at the very least they were giving them milk from their livestock, whatever they could afford to give them from their own households and their own tables. Today it's a very different story. They believe that Al-Shabaab are directly responsible for the deaths of their loved ones because of the ban of the aid groups. And we're seeing that now in the way that the civilian population have actually allowed the African Union forces to go forward. Many civilians are clearing areas ahead of AU forces to lessen collateral damage and allow them to really root out Al-Shabaab, Jonathan.
How much should we read into this? Is Somalia any closer to having a functioning state now that there's some order in Mogadishu? Can the rest of the country hope for that?
Well, psychologically, obviously, this is a huge thing for them to be pushed out of the capital. But realistically, they still control the vast majority of the country outside of the capital. You know, South and Central Somalia, a very important southern port in Kismayo, still continues to bring in revenue to them. But hopefully what this means is that the international community will see that it can be done, that Somalia is not a graveyard for any who try and intervene and help, and that the African Union forces, if they can do this much with very little support, you know, we were embedded with them and they have no maritime capacity, they have no helicopters, and they're only 9,000 strong. But if they can do this much with the very little aid and the very little support that they've been receiving, you know, the question is, what can they do if the world actually supports them? And that's going to be the next step to strengthen the African Union and the Somali government to allow them to go after the Shabaab in their own areas so that the Shabaab can't be allowed, so the Shabaab aren't allowed to regroup and come back into that capital, Jonathan.